Good evening and welcome to Jigsaw's webinar for parents. We are here to discuss helping young people deal with school and exam related anxiety. My name is Erica and I am a Jigsaw and educational psychologist, and I work from the Jigsaw Galway hub.
Hi, my name is Jules Thompson. I'm the clinical manager in Jigsaw North Fingal, and I work in the North Fingal hub.
So just, I suppose, an introduction to this evening's webinar. So the topic of anxiety around exams and exam stress, it comes up quite often in Jigsaw, in particular in relation to the Leaving Cert. I suppose it's a little bit different now. There's obviously a lot of additional variables to consider. I think the government announcement about exams being delayed and the junior cert, Leaving Cert being delayed and the junior cert being cancelled, it kind of brought up a whole of emotions for a lot of students. It is undoubtedly a very challenging situation for students. A lot of young people probably had an idea of what their Leaving Cert year would look like, and had a timeline in mind for that, and that has all been quite abruptly altered, and they now have to readjust and make new plans, and shift their focus, and that's challenging, and we acknowledge it's also difficult for parents to know how to support their young people, how to navigate them through this and what to say. So we will be coming to, I suppose, the difficulties with working from home and school closed and exams. But first, we're just going to chat about, I suppose, anxiety in general, and the stress response and kind of the typical exam stress that students experience in general.
So in relation to understanding anxiety, the stress response and exam stress, I suppose we need to kind of have an idea of what anxiety is. So I think sometimes for parents, it's very difficult to get a handle on what your young person is experiencing in relation to anxiety. So anxiety is a kind of a heightened level of stress that a young person can experience. In relation to anxiety, what happens is there's a lot of physiological symptoms, there's a lot of kind of thoughts, and there's behavior related to anxiety. So for a young person, what happens is the fight or flight response that we've all heard of kind of is triggered not only just by one event, could be a situation, or it could be a perception of a situation of threat. So for a young person, in relation to the physiological symptoms, what they might experience would be kind of a heightened kind of, their heart rate kind of speeds up, and they get this kind of churning in their stomach. They might feel nauseous. They might feel like an inability to breathe. Sometimes they would describe it as a tightness across their chest. And I suppose it's a heightened level of response. And sometimes it can be very distressing for a young person to be experiencing a lot of symptoms related to anxiety. And it can kind of cause the young person sometimes to have a response which might be kind of lack of concentration, anger, panic, and sometimes they'll feel very, very unwell, and almost can become tearful at times because they're not really sure what's happening in their body. And I suppose, as Erica mentioned, in relation to the exam stress, I suppose young people were preparing themselves for the exams. They've been working all year towards the exams, and it's the biggest state exams they'll ever sit in their life. And I suppose now, with what's happening in relation to COVID-19, young people are unsure as to when the exams might take place. They're unsure as to where, and they don't really have a timeline. So I suppose for young people who may have been stressed prior to COVID-19, with all this uncertainty, they're not sure what's happening. So I'd say a lot of young people that that are your daughters and sons are feeling even more pressure, even more stress, and may become quite anxious. So I suppose this workshop is about kind of giving you the tools and skills to help your young person manage those levels of anxiety or stress. I don't know if Erica has anything to add to that.
I think you kind of covered most of it there, Jules. But I suppose, yeah, like you said, anxiety, it's really individual. Not everybody responds to situations in the same way. You know, it's caused by how we think and feel about certain situations. And indeed, a lot of students do feel anxious or stressed about exams in particular. I suppose in relation to research, Jigsaw carried out a national study of youth mental health in 2012, the My World Survey, and recently in 2019, the My World Survey 2. And the top stressors for young people reported were school and exams. So I suppose it just shows that even without all this additional stress with the exams being delayed and schools closed, that exams, they are quite stressful in general.
Okay, so next we're going to move on to the stress performance curve. And this is something that we deliver to a lot of young people in schools when we're doing the exam stress workshop. So I suppose you'll see there on the low axis going from left to right, it starts with too little stress, and then the final term there is burnout. And then on the side axis, you'll see there's performance level. So in relation to too little stress, if a young person is feeling kind of too little stress or not very stressed at all, they might be kind of inactive, very relaxed, very laid back. If they're feeling no stress at all, they might even become kind of slightly fatigued. And you'll see there that red circle there at the midpoint is kind of, I suppose, the best place for a young person to be in relation to kind of their stress level. This is called the optimum stress level. So I suppose stress, you know, a lot of people kind of deem stress as a bad thing, but I suppose we all need a little bit of stress in our life. It's a motivating factor for a lot of us. And I suppose for a young person, it can be very motivating when they're at that optimum stress level where they're kind of managing their homework, they're managing home life, they're doing a bit of study in relation to the exams, and they're kind of being able to kind of balance that stress level. So they're not feeling too little stress or too much stress. But when a young person begins to kind of start to experience too much stress in their life, it can lead to that balance being kicked off kilter. And a young person who's experiencing kind of higher levels of stress might kind of begin to, I suppose, feel a little bit exhausted. They might be putting in kind of 6 and 7 hours of study instead of kind of 2 to 3 hours per evening. And it can lead to the young person feeling exhausted. It can lead to them kind of feeling very, very stressed. And I suppose this can slip then into anxiety, panic, and anger. And I suppose when a young person gets to that point, that's when they kind of sometimes would have like a panicked feeling and an anxious feeling. And it can lead to them not being able to concentrate. It can lead to them feeling kind of nauseous or sick, unable to kind of, I suppose, focus on a task at hand. And I suppose, as you see there at the end, this can almost be immobilizing for a young person if they're experiencing that really high level of anxiety that they're not actually able to do anything, because they're so, I suppose, they're being triggered and their body's being triggered, and the thoughts, those negative thoughts are coming in, and all those physiological symptoms which I mentioned previously too. They're trying to manage all of that. And I suppose in Jigsaw, what we try and do is we try and, I suppose, help the young person to get back to that midpoint, how to bring them back to that midpoint where they get a balance in their life, that they have a bit of good stress, which is motivating for them, and that they're not leading themselves into that exhaustion phase or that anxious phase. And I suppose for you as parents, you might be experiencing your young person, oh, my young person is actually at that point where they're really, really anxious. And what we're going to do through the workshop is give you tips and hints as to how you might be able to help your young person get back to that really important midpoint. And I suppose that's why we kind of present the performance curve, to identify that a little bit of stress is good, but when it gets out of hand or it gets too much, that it can actually have a really negative effect on the young person. So I don't know, Erica, if you've anything to add to that, or?
I think you covered it really well there about how I suppose stress can be both a positive and a negative thing. And that kind of leads on to the next slide, I guess. You know, we've identified that anxiety is very much a normal human response, and it's something that we all experience, and a little bit of stress can be motivating sometimes to push us outside our comfort zone, to perform or study or whatever it is we need to do. But sometimes it becomes a problem. I suppose, how do you know that when you're a young person's anxiety is a problem? If you could reflect on your young person and kind of ask yourself, what are they experiencing? Well, you know, what you're aware of, what do you know of that they're experiencing? Do you know, are they experiencing the physical sensations of anxiety? So are they having kind of nausea, stomach aches? Are they having muscle tension, headaches? Is it impacting their thoughts? Are they engaging in kind of unhelpful, negative thinking styles, like thinking, I'm going to fail, or kind of always focusing on what could possibly go wrong? Is it impacting their emotions? Are they having low mood? Are they irritable, snappy, nervous? And is it impacting their behaviour? So have you noticed, is it impacting their sleep or their appetite? Are they isolating themselves? So at those different elements of what anxiety could be affecting and experiencing, and then looking at how is it affecting their life. So yeah, have you noticed any behaviour change? Is it impacting their concentration, study? Is it impacting their day-to-day functioning? Are they functioning as normal, or is it impacting that? And then asking how long has it been going on for? So is this kind of continuous, or is it a once-off? Because if somebody is quite anxious for, you know, 1 or 2 days, it can be really appropriate depending on what they're anxious about. You know, if some alarming information comes out on the news and it's just quite worrying, it can be normal to be anxious about that. But I suppose when the anxiety is going on for kind of a couple of days or a couple of weeks, and the feelings aren't decreasing, then it's more of a problem. Have you anything to add to that, Jules?
I suppose thinking about this earlier, I was reflecting on it, and I was kind of thinking that anxiety for a young person can almost become a family problem. So when a young person in a family is anxious, it can actually lead to anxiety within the family as well, because everybody's mindful that that young person is anxious, and they're trying to kind of not upset them or not stress them out. And it can be really quite difficult for a family to try and manage that as well. So just in relation to how it's affecting their life, it also affects the family life too, and that can be kind of difficult to manage. So I just wanted to share my reflection on that too.
Absolutely. So what can parents do to help? It is a particularly difficult time for parents now, I suppose, dealing with young people with anxiety related to exams, and along with worries that you might have yourself regarding everything that's going on right now with COVID-19 virus, maybe worrying about getting sick or worrying about relatives, and then also trying to support your young person through this. So what kind of things, I suppose, can parents do? First, really important to encourage your young person to talk about their feelings, worries and concerns. Give them space to open up. I suppose gently give them space to open up. Sometimes young people might not be ready to open up immediately, but it's kind of letting them know that you're there to support them, giving them kind of some time and attention, and just letting them know that they have that space if they need it. And as I said, they might not use it straight away, but maybe eventually they might, you know, by knowing that you're there for them, they might open up and talk, validate their feelings. So letting them know that it's really understandable to feel worried, upset, frustrated, in particular in relation to the students whose exams have been delayed, to feel kind of angry, annoyed. Like, those feelings are all really, really normal, and it's understandable to feel that way. It's important to give space and time, I suppose, to allow uncomfortable feelings to be experienced. Um, so in relation to when I suppose the government announced that exams would, take place in August, young people need to allow time to feel annoyed and frustrated and upset. I think sometimes with parents or with anybody who really cares about somebody, it's a natural response, I suppose, to jump in and want to make them feel better and kind of want to help them problem solve and come up with solutions. But sometimes, I suppose, when people are really overwhelmed, they might kind of shoot down every solution that you have because they're just not there yet. They kind of need some time to just allow those feelings to surface, and allow a couple of days of just feeling annoyed and kind of not working on the solutions and what to do immediately. So I suppose when young people are overwhelmed, they sometimes just need empathy and understanding, and a little bit of reassurance to know that you're there, for when they are ready to kind of take steps. But just kind of letting them know you're there, and gentle reassurance, and accepting, I suppose, like acknowledging and accepting your young person's feelings, and accepting that it is okay to feel fearful, disappointed, all these kind of uncomfortable feelings that we don't like to experience. And for yourself also, it's understandable that, with the COVID-19 virus, that it will affect us all and that we will have some days that we don't feel good. And to just accept that that's okay. And reassurance then, you just, gentle reassurance, to your young person: I understand this is stressful, but let's work together, and, letting them know that you can get through it together. And I suppose after giving time and space to allow your young person to feel and experience their own natural reactions and responses to certain overwhelming situations, then you can kind of reassure and remind them that you're there to support them, to problem solve and make a plan. Working collaboratively, you can set goals, step by step, make small steps towards their goals and work on those. So encourage them to talk to you about their concerns, and if there is anything that you can do to help them. Some young people are really independent. They can kind of make their own plans and set their own goals. Others might need a little bit more support from parents, and it might be just reminding them that, about directing them to certain teachers if they have questions. Some might be maybe reluctant to contact teachers, and they might just need your encouragement to do that. Or even practical things like helping them set up their study space, or if they're finding it really difficult to concentrate in their environment, if there's a lot of noise or a lot of siblings, just working together to problem solve and see what you can do to improve on these things. So sometimes it is kind of practical things. And even it's a combination of things, I guess. Even is there things you can work on as kind of rewards, at the weekend after a week of studying? Can you enjoy their favorite dinner, or do a nice family games or activities or things like that, just to work together to see what could help and support them. Have you anything to add, Jules?
I think that's good. I think, goal setting is very good for a young person. And I suppose sometimes it's hard when you say a goal to a young person, they're kind of like, I'm not really too sure what that means. But I suppose just identifying what do they want to work towards, or what would be, a good week for them. What would that goal look like? And maybe just kind of give the young person the words around, not saying goal setting as such, but kind of saying, what would a good week look like? What would you like to get done within the good week? Because sometimes we set goals with young people in the sessions as well in Jigsaw, and they kind of sometimes find it difficult to identify, well, what's the goal I'm working towards? Sometimes if you give them kind of prompts and words, and they get to the actual goal themselves, so they're like, oh yeah, that's the goal I want to achieve. So sometimes it's just giving the young person, especially at a younger age, just giving them the words and the prompts maybe might be helpful. So next, we kind of, I suppose, put together a support routine and a structure. This is not prescriptive by any means. You might be able to take, certain elements of this that you find helpful, and there might be other elements that you don't find helpful. And so we kind of just put this kind of together. So we were kind of saying, I suppose, with all the uncertainty that's out there, young people respond really well to routine and schedules. So maybe helping a young person or you're a young person to kind of have a study schedule and a timetable. So the study schedule isn't restrictive, and it's not that every hour has to be accounted for, but that I suppose you might be able to work on the study schedule together and maybe timetable in times where they can have downtime, take a break, maybe go for a walk within the 2K area where they live. But I suppose allowing time for just downtime. But I suppose sometimes when we do a study schedule with a young person in the session, we might say, okay, do you work best in the morning or do you work best in the evening? And a lot of young people would find that they work sometimes better in the evening. So you might be able to kind of, I suppose, routinely do a schedule around their evening, and help them kind of create a timetable in that sense. Sometimes we'd say to young people, and you might be able to say to your young person, start with your favorite subject first. So if you're going to be doing a block of study, say for 40 minutes, and to start with their favorite subject. So it kind of sets them up. They've done well, they've answered an exam question in their favorite subject, and it can kind of set them up with a good feeling for the day, that they feel they've achieved something, and then maybe start off with subjects that maybe aren't their best but might be their second best. So to allow the schedule, I suppose down there you see allow for flexibility. So allow the schedule to be flexible. It doesn't have to be really, really structured. Because I suppose with all that's going on now, our lives are very unstructured. So the basics like sleep is very important for young people with their developing brain. And so they need to be getting about 8 hours a night. Nutrition, also, this can be quite difficult with a young person. Because I too like my junk food, and young people like their junk food too. But I suppose having maybe a nutritious, even one meal throughout the day that might be nutritious, so dinner, so making sure that you get the vegetables in or fruit or whatever it might be, and getting the young person to do some physical activity as well. So even if it's going for a walk by themselves, with the dog, with a friend maybe, or with a family member, and getting that physical activity in during the day can really, I suppose, it can release endorphins into the brain, which are feel-good hormones, and that can be a real stress reliever for some young people. Connecting socially with their friends. We all know now that we see a lot of the top of heads of young people because they're on their phone constantly. But I suppose connecting with their friends, because they can't see them, they can't physically see them, I suppose has become more pronounced these days. So they're always on their phone to their friends. And I suppose referring to the research that Erica mentioned earlier, in the My World survey too, they did identify that they feel that their friends are like a second family to them. So they're very, very important. Enjoyable family activities. I suppose it's the really good weather that we've had. Even, I suppose, asking the young person to kind of come out to the garden and have lunch with the family as a whole unit might be a nice family activity for everybody. Maybe to do kind of games nights. I suppose like any sort of board games that you might be able to do in the evening. But allowing again for that flexibility. So it's supposed to be a structured routine. It's supposed to be kind of fluid, but that there is a little bit of structure there. But there also is time for them to engage in things that they feel are stress relievers for them. So I'm not sure if Erica has anything to add to that.
I suppose, yeah, I think you've covered it really. Just to reiterate that routine and structure, it's so important to kind of for a young person to kind of have a sense of control and predictability over their days, and that can be really helpful. But the allowing for flexibility as well is so important, and kind of allowing for the odd off day, or if they're not feeling it, that they don't have to be completely rigid. If concentration is really poor, depending on what's going on around them. So I think, yeah, routine and structure is so important, but allowing for a little bit of flexibility as well.
So I suppose just talking about kind of reassurance and relationships. So I suppose we're all kind of a little bit unsure as to kind of how much information to know around the coronavirus and kind of the worries related to that. So I suppose giving your young person reassurance, so discussing the COVID-19 related worries. So what you can kind of say to a young person is, look, you know, this is going on for some time. We're not sure when the exams might happen, but I suppose we need to keep in our mind that the exams will take place at some point. And kind of identifying if your young person is becoming distressed because of a lot of exposure to the media. You know, like I know a lot of young people are kind of watching a lot of news, like Sky News, which is quite sensationalized sometimes. So I'd say probably just from a practical element, maybe to kind of say to your young person, look, don't be looking up stuff around the coronavirus on the internet. Maybe just sit down with the family at, you know, the 6 o'clock news, and we'll all get our feel of the coronavirus, and maybe not to focus on it outside of that time. And to just kind of give them practical advice around kind of adhering to the restrictions, and that the restrictions are, you know, a little bit annoying, but I suppose we're trying to keep everybody safe and trying to get over the coronavirus as quickly as possible. And so limiting that exposure to the media, and reminding them that you'll all work together as a family, and that you're there to support them through this, that we're all kind of dealing with it together, and that it's a family effort, and it's a team effort and a community effort. And just reminding them that, you know, you, mom and dad, you're there to talk to them if they have concerns about anything, if they want to ask questions about anything, that you'll try and answer them as well as you can, with the information that you have. But just saying to them, look, you know, now is a time where we actually get to spend a lot of time as a family. You know, and sometimes, you know, tensions will be frayed, and kind of people get a little bit annoyed because they're in such close proximity to each other, but just reassuring them that, you know, it will come to an end at some point. In relation to relationships, I suppose the coronavirus has caused us to kind of be spending a lot of time together, and that can be a really, really helpful and positive thing. You can also have its downsides, where sometimes a young person just needs space and they can't get it, and you also need space from your young person as well. But I suppose it's about kind of enjoying the time now that we have together, and trying to do nice things together. So even kind of having lunch out in the garden with the lovely weather, or kind of even fostering that kind of level of open communication. So just being around the young person, being present, and if they have a question to ask you, they can do that very easily. So just fostering that open communication.
Thank you. And yeah, just to, I suppose, emphasize the importance of your own kind of self-care and managing your own anxiety. Anxiety, as we've said, is so normal even for adults. But young people can often kind of pick up on anxiety in the house, and often young people kind of look to their parents to kind of guide them in how to respond to certain stressful situations. So I suppose just to be aware that if your own anxiety is very high, that might impact your young person's. And I suppose there's a balance. You know, you don't want to dismiss or not talk about your own worries. You know, it's important to let your child or adolescent or young person know that, you know, that you are worried. But I suppose just trying not to be very, very frantic, and kind of feeling that you're not in control. I suppose it's important to kind of talk about, you know, the reassuring aspects of what's going on, and you know that you're listening to government advice and you're following guidelines, and that, you know, we're safe right now, and that we have a certain level of control within our household to manage certain worries. Looking at your own self-care as well, we often talk in Jigsaw about the importance of parent self-care. You'll be much more effective, I suppose, looking after or supporting your young person if you're looking after yourself first and foremost. I suppose we can much easier deal with challenges and stressors that come upon us if we kind of have the basics and the basic self-care, and that we're engaging in basic self-care practices. And finally, compassion and empathy. I suppose it's the first time that we're all going through a situation like this. It's unknown territory to everyone. So it's about, doing our best, and being kind to ourselves and being compassionate. We can sometimes put high expectations on ourselves to get everything right or get everything perfect, and then feel a little bit stressed or anxious if things aren't going perfectly. But it really is about just, doing our best, and we're all in this together, and try to ignore that inner critic. Sometimes we can be really self-critical if we feel we're not getting everything right, and just, remember to be compassionate towards yourself, and compassionate, I suppose, to others as well. It's really important when we're all in the household together. Often, sometimes tensions can get high, and you can become irritable with other people in the household. And I suppose just being compassionate to everyone in the household, that we all have different coping styles, and that even, some people that might be quite anxious, they might come across as quite irritable, and so just having a little bit of compassion towards that. Yeah, anything to add, Jules?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I just put a couple of support elements here for parents, all offered by Jigsaw. So the free phone, we have a new free phone. So it's for young people or parents and guardians who are worried about their young person, and it's 1-800-JIGSAW. So you can speak directly with the clinician. There's parent workshops available to access via Jigsaw Online. There's also another tab on the online service. There's group chats for young people. There's also Ask Jigsaw, where a young person or a parent can ask a clinician directly a question. And then we have the support email service, which is help@jigsaw.ie, and parents can send an email if they have a question, or if they would prefer to have a call back from a clinician. So they're all offerings by Jigsaw to support our young people with their mental health at this very uncertain time. So thank you for taking the time to view the workshop with us, and now we're open to questions.
Yeah, and I have a question in here, so I can just read it out. So I have a question from a parent here. So many timetables for my son, but he just doesn't stick to any of them. I always make sure he's involved. He's so distracted and unmotivated. He has huge anxiety, just wants to stay in bed, play games, watch TV, at my wit's end. Okay, so that's really difficult. It sounds like you have worked with your son to try and come up with, let me just look here again. Yeah, you've had him involved in making the timetables. It can be really difficult, I suppose, dealing with a young person who doesn't seem motivated and isn't following through with plans. I wonder about what are his goals in all of this. You kind of sat down and talked about what he wants to achieve, and is there something about the schedules or the timetables that he finds are a bit ambitious for him? I wonder what part of it that he is finding difficult. Is there any kind of compromises that could be made, or extra things that could support him? It sounds like you both have worked together. Sorry, I'm just trying to make this a little bit clearer to see. Okay, and he has anxiety as well. And sometimes, often the way anxiety manifests itself, it can be really difficult to kind of follow through with schedules, having the motivation to get up and to actually sit down and really concentrate. I wonder what this young person is anxious about. Is it about the exams? Is it in general? Just kind of, I suppose, exploring this with him, and getting some detail from him, about what exactly is going on for him. Definitely, I suppose, working together and kind of seeing what would he think would work for him. Have you anything to add to that, Jules?
No, not really. I think you kind of have some good advice there. I have a question here. So the parent is saying that his or her son has become almost obsessed about talking about the Leaving Cert. He's very angry the exams are deferred. He continuously expresses this anger. He has also become very tearful and has cried a lot since the exams have been deferred. He's cried a lot since the government made the announcement. I don't know how to stop him obsessing about it. So I suppose this is a question that comes up a lot, and a lot of parents have expressed this over the free phone service, that their young people are really, really upset about the exams being deferred, because it seems like it's just deferring. You know, if a young person is really anxious, it's like deferring that anxiety and kind of building up on that anxiety. But I suppose maybe to talk to your young person and say, look, I know you're angry, and I know that, you know, it's not fair that this is happening, and that you're doing the Leaving Cert at this year, and that I suppose you would like the exams just to be over and done with. But I suppose there are positives in relation to that, that maybe he has a little bit more time to study if he needs that. But also to say to him, look, you know, we're here to support you. And I suppose to use the supports that he has from the school, supports from friends, and to kind of just say, you know, like, overthinking about the Leaving Cert and kind of obsessing about it isn't going to change what's happened. So he's expending a lot of his energy obsessing about the Leaving Cert, and maybe it's kind of getting him into a bit of a spiral of anxiety. So to kind of say to him, look, you thinking about it and obsessing about it isn't going to change the fact that it's been deferred. But say, I do understand that it is irritating for you and it's just prolonging the inevitable. But to kind of say, look, we're here to support you, and you know, we're here to kind of, you know, reassure you that, you know, the exams will happen at some point, but it is unfair, you know, and to kind of validate those feelings for him, kind of say it is unfair and it does make you angry, but you know, this is kind of what we have to deal with now, and hopefully it won't be deferred for too much longer.
And just to remind any other parents that you can send questions in here through us, and we will do our best to answer them. We have another question here in from a parent that sent the question in a little bit earlier. My daughter is doing the Leaving Cert. She's trying her best to study during these difficult circumstances. She continues to keep contact with the school through emails, and we also do Zoom grinds in 3 subjects. Her main challenge is maths. She's doing higher level. Unfortunately failed her maths mock exam, but wants to continue to do higher level. My concern is when I try to support her, such as offering suggestions for online maths courses, or ask how she's getting on, she immediately either shuts down or will answer me in a rude tone. I understand her situation wholeheartedly, and I feel I do back away and assess her mood before I approach the subject. What can I do to support her, or should I just let her be? Okay, it sounds like this parent is being really empathetic and understanding towards their young person. You know, it sounds like you're being very sensitive, I suppose, assessing her mood before approaching the subject. And it sounds like through your actions, I suppose that young person hopefully will does see that you are supporting her by, you know, getting her grinds and by asking how she's doing. It is really difficult for parents knowing, I suppose, how to support their young person if they are kind of snapping at them or being irritable. If the parent is asking how they're doing, that is really hard to take. I suppose gentle approaches, ensuring that she knows that you're there for her, and I suppose empathizing that her irritability possibly is coming from a place of anxiety and stress about these exams. And that's not to say that, you know, you can just, I suppose, take it. I mean, of course, you know, letting her know that you are just there to support her, and that maybe what if she has been particularly irritable or rude, that, you know, that is a little bit hurtful, and that you're just trying to support her, but also empathizing that I suppose when people are quite anxious and overwhelmed, they often can be irritable, and I think as adults we kind of have a little bit more control. We've more kind of awareness, and we can be more reflective when we are irritable. And you know, if we're feeling kind of snappy towards a family member or a partner or a friend, we can sometimes tell that, oh, it's because I have this deadline tomorrow, or it's because I'm stressed, and we have that awareness. And sometimes young people might not have developed that sense of awareness of knowing that they're just really anxious about exams, and being able to identify that. And sometimes they might, I suppose, snap at somebody before kind of reflecting on how they feel. Sometimes making statements as opposed to kind of asking questions. Sometimes when we ask people that are stressed, you know, how are you doing? How are you feeling? It can sometimes feel like they're being bombarded a little bit. I think sometimes when you're really stressed and you don't really want to talk about it, if somebody asks you, how are you? I suppose if you say fine, then you're not being truthful. But if you say you're not fine, then you kind of have to expand and talk about how you feel. Sometimes making a statement like, oh, I hope you're doing okay. It can be a little bit easier for the person to then kind of open up whenever they feel like it, as opposed to kind of feeling immediately that they need to tell you exactly how they're feeling if they are kind of stressed. Or just, you know, I hope you're doing okay. Would you like a cup of tea, or is there anything I can get you? Sometimes that's kind of a more gentle approach in, as opposed to kind of asking direct questions. Or even you mentioned kind of asking your young person if, you know, they'd do online maths courses, maybe even just stating, oh, I see that there's some free online maths courses there, they might be interesting, as opposed to maybe asking, will you do it now? Sometimes questions when you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed can be kind of difficult.
So I have a very interesting question here, Erica. The parent says, I have a 17-year-old girl. She's very hard to motivate to achieve even the smallest task, and this is not normal for her. She says she wants to cope with this in her own way, but we're concerned she's struggling being away from her friends and boyfriend, and now can become quite emotional. She spends a lot of time in her own room and refuses to even go for a walk. Should we, as a last resort, force her to come and join the family, or leave her be? So I suppose, as we spoke earlier, we were saying that kind of friends and boyfriends can sometimes almost become as important as your family. And I suppose you're able to identify that for her, that she's missing her friends and missing her boyfriend and missing that interaction between friends and her boyfriend. And I suppose you're feeling that her motivation is kind of getting lower. So I suppose even kind of maybe saying to your daughter, look, you know, I've noticed, you know, that you're not really kind of doing tasks, you know, as well, or as, you know, happy in your way as you would have been previously, and just kind of saying, look, I'm noticing that, you know, you're maybe really missing your friends and your boyfriend, and I know that that's really hard for you, and to kind of validate that experience and kind of say, you know, I understand that it is really annoying kind of not being able to connect with your friends, but say, look, me and dad, or I'm I'm really worried about you spending a lot of time in your room, and you seem a little bit emotional, and I just want you to know that I'm here to support you. And if you want to talk about anything at all, doesn't even have to be in relation to exams or family, anything at all, that I'm here for you. That, you know, me and Dad or me, we just want to support you and want you to help to feel as secure as possible. And we just have noticed that you're a little bit tearful, and I know that you want to cope with it in your own way. But if there's anything that I can do to help, please let me know what it is. You know, I think for young people, kind of sometimes they're unsure as to what it is that they need. They know they need something, that, you know, they're emotional, but they're not sure exactly what it is that they need. So just to say to your young person, look, if you are able to identify what it is that you need from mom and dad, or from me or dad or whatever, and please let us know, and we'll do all that we can to support you and to kind of meet those needs where you're at. But just to say, look, we are here for you and we're open to having a chat with you, but we'd really love you to kind of join the family, maybe out for a little bit of a walk, and explain to her that, you know, when you do physical activity, that endorphins are released, they're feel good hormones, and that they actually might give her a little bit of headspace to get out of the house. I wouldn't force her, but I'd kind of say, you know, we'd love for you to come along. It'd be great for us to do it as a family and spend some quality time together and just kind of get out of the house and getting out into the fresh air instead of being cooped up. And the weather is so glorious that you might even get a tan along the way. So I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, I suppose just a note as well, I'm not sure if we kind of mentioned, but I suppose we're talking about kind of different suggestions or ideas, but just to note that every household is very different and every learner is different. So I suppose that there is no set one way. Sometimes it can be a bit of trial and error as to what works best. And just adapting different kind of suggestions and ideas to your household and your family and your young person.
So we had a couple of questions come in earlier just around kind of, I suppose, young people feeling very, very stressed about all the news around the coronavirus and that kind of thing, and kind of, I suppose, soaking up social media and kind of, I suppose, watching reels and reels of news around the coronavirus. And I suppose just to kind of say to parents, you know, that you can kind of say to your young person, you know, it's really good to be kind of up to date and aware of what's going on with the coronavirus. But I suppose watching kind of hours and hours of news around the coronavirus, you know, probably isn't the best way to kind of alleviate your distress or your anxiety. And to kind of say, look, you know, it's good to be up to date and that's great. But I suppose sometimes we need to kind of focus on spending time as a family, kind of maybe focusing a little bit more on your study or connecting with your friends a little bit more, and to kind of agree with them that they'll only watch the news with you at 6 o'clock and that everybody be up to date at that point. And kind of, I suppose, to try and support them around their distress, because a lot of the news sometimes they hear on social media can be really quite frightening, and it can be difficult for a young person to manage that on their own. So to kind of say, look, you know, if we watch the news together, at least if you have questions or that kind of thing, you want to discuss it, that we're all there together and we can discuss it as a family. So I just thought that might be helpful just to mention.
Thanks, Jules. There's another question in here. The students are not engaging in our school. Any tips for the teachers to motivate? We are a DESH inner city. Yeah, we're a DESH school. Okay, so when students aren't engaging and teachers are actively trying, that can be quite difficult. I wonder what kind of engagement has been had. I suppose I have heard of students kind of not engaging with class teachers when teachers are sending some work home. I mean, some students love to get kind of the work sent home for some structure, but others, it is definitely a problem when they're not engaging. I've heard of some kind of creative ways of getting students connected that don't kind of involve the pressure of having to have certain work done, such as having kind of classroom Zooms, having kind of a 40-minute session of classes on Zoom, and just having kind of a social chat as kind of just a way to kind of connect with their school and connect with their class. That's, I suppose, one way of kind of getting students kind of connected a little bit with their school. Sometimes one-on-one support can be helpful for the students that aren't engaging. So maybe a phone call from whether it's a guidance counsellor or a homeschool liaison officer or a year ahead, or maybe a teacher that they particularly get on with. Sometimes I suppose the emails that are going out to the whole class, some students might kind of see that as optional and feel they don't have to engage, and maybe if they got some, I suppose, one-to-one support, a phone call or just to check in with them, that might help them to feel supported. But it definitely is difficult for teachers when they feel like they're trying and maybe they're not getting that feedback back. But I think all you can do is let the students know that you're there, and to try to check in with them, and hopefully by them knowing that you're there, that they will get back to you if they need your support. But definitely kind of continuously trying to just try creative ways of checking in with students.
Thanks, Erica. So I have a question here from a parent just saying, how do you help a young person if they can't identify what is wrong with them when you offer support and they say, I don't know how you can help me? So I think sometimes for young people, it's very difficult for them to identify what it is that they need. Sometimes they know that something's off or something's not right, but they're not too sure what it is that they need. So sometimes kind of prompting your daughter or son to say, like, is it support you need, or is it kind of food that you need, or what might it be? And to kind of say, look, I know that you want support, and I'm here to offer you support. I'm here to reassure you and to kind of, I suppose, have open communication with you, but just say, look, we're both learning how to support each other and support each other as a family. So say, I know that you can't identify what it is or what kind of support you want, but to say to the young person that I am here for you, if you want to talk about anything, that I'm open and that you can always communicate with me. Sometimes young people find it difficult to actually verbalize to a parent what it is they need. And I suppose I've had a few young people like that, and I've kind of said to them, would you think about texting mom, even if you're upstairs and she's downstairs? That sometimes it's easier to tell a parent what it is that you need or what you're struggling with. If you text them or write them a letter or send them an email, like sometimes the young person just doesn't actually want to verbally say what it is they're struggling with. And that has worked for some young people. It obviously hasn't worked for other young people. But I think sometimes saying to the young person, look, if you don't want to say it to me verbally, you can just send me a text and maybe let me know. Or to kind of say, look, even to tell them, I did a workshop around kind of anxiety and stress and what young people are experiencing, and I learned a lot, and I'd love to be able to chat with you about it and see if anything like that might be beneficial or helpful to you. And so maybe to show them that you're taking an interest in them as a young person and about supporting them and that kind of thing might actually make a difference to the young person.
Okay, I have another question here. Sorry, one moment. Our son feels schedules don't work for me. You haven't a clue. It's 30 years since you did an exam, and changes the topic to general relationship and control over him. Sorry, one moment. I'm just I can only catch the top of the question. But I will try to address that. So son feels schedules work for him. I'm kind of saying that you don't have a clue and that it's been a long time since you've done exams. Okay, so I suppose it sounds like kind of your son is kind of shooting back the suggestions. It sounds like whatever you say, it's kind of shooting it back at you and kind of saying, you know, you don't. It sounds like he's indicating you don't understand, you don't know. I wonder, is there any kind of ways that you could open up the conversation, kind of in other ways? Is there? Can you kind of ask him what would work for him? How does he feel about school and exams? Does he want to study? Does he have a different idea other than schedules? Sometimes even kind of bring it up as, look, can we try this as an experiment? How about kind of trying this way for 1 week? If you've any ideas, maybe try your way for a few days. Can you see, maybe trying to come up with a few ideas or a few different techniques, and maybe not. Sometimes I think if young people think they're kind of being dictated to or told this is the way you need to do it, they can maybe resist a little bit. But if there was a way of kind of working together, of finding a few different techniques, and sometimes saying, look, can we just try this as an experiment? I'm not saying it's going to work, but how about give it a few days? And maybe if he has an idea of a way that might work for him, giving him a few days to try his idea, and then kind of reflecting on that afterwards, and maybe even talking about, like asking, look, is there anything I can do to support you to make it easier? What do you think would help? And if there was things that you could even talk about to maybe look forward to after a week of trying a certain method or technique. Can we do something really fun or nice at the weekend, or just something that you know you can maybe forget about study for a little while, and just something that you want to do? Or if it's something that you know they enjoy reading or watching Netflix, or playing, you know, gaming, playing or something, kind of setting certain time for that after you've done a certain amount of hours of, you know, whatever technique that you kind of decide on, whether it's doing one task and taking a break, or kind of following the kind of schedule of the school, or you know, some people kind of ignore the clock and kind of focus on a task, or other people just do a burst of, you know, 20-minute bursts, kind of deciding trying to think of different methods. And sometimes it's about a bit of compromise. Sometimes parents might think, you know, you have to be sitting at your desk at 9 a.m. But there might sometimes be a bit of compromise. Some young people kind of have been finding that if they get up and go for a walk and do a bit of exercise and actually start at maybe 10 or 11, that's okay too. But I suppose trying to find something that works for him, and that if he is getting something productive done with his way, kind of trying to work that out together.
Okay, I have a question here, Erica, as well. I suppose the parents mentioned that her daughter is stressed out over the leaving cert, and that she's also quite concerned because her daughter is quite low. So I suppose if your daughter is quite low, I'm wondering, has she been experiencing that for some time, or to try and identify if this is kind of like a new I suppose, feeling that she's experiencing. Because if your daughter's been low for quite some time, I suppose you need to be able to identify, is she lower than she used to be, or is this kind of a new feeling that's started to happen? And sometimes to kind of identify to your daughter, to kind of say, look, I realize, I've kind of identified that you've been a little bit low of late. It's not really like you. It's not kind of like you normally. And I'm just wondering, is there something that's kind of making you feel a little bit more down or sad, or is there anything that I can do to support you in that? And to kind of identify and to kind of, I suppose, reassure and say, look, I know you're really worried about the Leaving Cert, and I know that it's a really kind of uncertain time as in relation to kind of what's going to happen with the Leaving Cert, when it's going to happen, where it's going to happen, and say, we're all feeling, that for you, and that's really hard for you, and it's particularly more difficult because of the coronavirus, and we don't know what's going to be happening with your Leaving Cert, and kind of, I suppose, allow her to express her frustration or her low mood around that, around the not knowing and the uncertainty and how unfair that is, and the injustice of it all. To kind of say, look, we're here for you, and we want to support you, or I want to support you, but I've noticed you've been low, and that's kind of making me a little bit more concerned for you. Is there anything that might help you to lift your mood a little bit? Is there something in particular that you think might help that? And she doesn't know, kind of maybe kind of give her suggestions like, would it be good to spend more time with your family? Would you like to kind of maybe have your phone for a couple more hours than you're having it at the moment? Because I know some parents are kind of restricting the phones and stuff like that, in order for the young person to study, but maybe to give her maybe an extra hour with that or whatnot. But just to say, look, anything that I can do, I'll try and do to help to support you. But I'm worried about you feeling so down. And if you're able to identify what you need, please let me know. I'm here for you. And I'd love to chat. And like I said to the previous question, to let your young person know, to say, oh, look, I actually did a workshop with you, so because I wanted to know how to support you better. And I learned a lot, and I'd love to chat with you about that. That I think sometimes the young people are actually taken aback that their parents, are really interested in their well-being sometimes, even though we all are as parents. But I think sometimes the young person might be like, oh, okay, I never really knew that that you were thinking of me, or that kind of thing. So maybe those things might help. And I suppose we're kind of getting to the point where I don't know, Erica, if you've any more questions there, or if we should let people enjoy their evening.
Yeah, I think that is that there. Apologies, I think my screen froze there for a couple of minutes.
I think if that's it, thank you so much, everybody, for attending and for sending in the questions. And I hope for myself and Erica that was a helpful workshop, and obviously just focus on the supports that I put up there and that are being offered by Jigsaw, and stay safe, keep washing your hands, and social distancing, and thank you so much for your attendance.
Yeah, as Jill said, yeah, thanks very much for attending. And I think, yeah, the main points we've mentioned, but just remembering that we're all doing our best, that you are doing your best, and it's a really difficult situation. I think this year's Leaving Cert students are a really uniquely challenged cohort of students, and it's just a really challenging time for them and for you as parents. So look after yourselves, and be compassionate to yourselves. You're doing your best, and that's all you can do, and that, yeah, everybody is in it together. Thank you.